Hello, this is SoTO. Welcome back. Today I have a very special guest and probably a one-time only thing, so enjoy. This is Slade, my friend I've known for about 67 years before I was born, and we've been playing Guild Wars 2 forever.
Hello.
And
68 years to be exact, before
right.
Guild Wars.
But especially with the serendipitous announcement of Guild Wars 3 getting funded, which actually happened overnight, so by the time this goes up, it'll be like a week old. But I figured he would be a good person to bring on this because I thought it would provide both my viewers and ArenaNet, if they watch this, some perspective, not necessarily to learn what they did wrong or right, but more just like, I think this is a story that I think is interesting and worth telling, and all of life is just experiences of people, people's experiences being retold. So it's interesting. Because you basically won an MMO.
Yeah, you could say that, I guess. It depends on your perspective, but I had fun while I was doing it, and so I beat the game in my perspective and left.
I think he's obviously free to correct me on any of this, but Slade is the man. If we go to his API key, which he's graciously provided here, and I'll try to not dox him too hard. If we scroll down through everything as far as stats goes, he, to my knowledge and to Efficiency's knowledge, is the man who managed to make the most legendaries in the game. And still holds that title 2 years after he, quotes, left or stopped playing Guild Wars 2, which is really impressive. And I'll go into a little bit of detail later on how that managed to happen. But kind of like sitting in the build editor, wasting my time was my thing. Your thing was just core map completion for a really long time. You want to talk about like why you did that? Was it an aggressive, I've got to be the best thing, or is it just like something you did for fun?
A little bit of both, just to be clear. And I know that there's people out there like GuildMM and a lot of other like early on map completers and stuff. People who wanted or needed gold. I didn't. The difference is that these people were not binding the legendaries. I bound 90% of the ones I made, and I sold off maybe one every 5 or 6 for more capital to make more if I was getting low from just doing other things. Because on top of this is what I did while my family was growing, and part of the thing that we'll get to with the legendary Armory later that popped up that made it a perfect timing was that I was able to leave when my family was old enough for me to want to spend more time with them or be free to. At the time though, I was hanging out as a stay-at-home dad who had a lot more time on his hands and helping my wife around the house and doing things, so I needed something to fill my time from my friends who were not around yet. Plus, I hadn't hit a good hard MMO like World of Warcraft or anything like that. I skipped that completely. And so when I started doing dungeon tours back when that was popular and the money-making source, I did that religiously. I would do dungeon tours, Fractals, everything that we had available. And that like grew into raids as time went on.
That was before I even met you.
Yeah, that was long ago. I was in random guild, just random people, meetings, just, I ended up getting my friend circle from there, and then I grew into meeting you later and when I applied to the guild. And that was just because most of my friends were upset with, like, I think Heart of Thorns, or at least a large number of them, were like leaving because they didn't want to do the stuff, and I wanted to do raids. I wanted to keep going. I was enjoying legendary items, legendary creation, but again, when that wasn't happening, I had to wait for people to get off work. So I would map complete usually during that time. And that's just how my life would continue for the most part. Even when I started World be Worlding hardcore, I would World be World with my preferred guilds or my friends. And usually my friends, it would be when they got off work, and in the mornings with the guilds who are like Eastern, Southeast Asia guilds. Those would be who I would be going with. And in the meantime, there'd be like a good 4, 5, 6 hour chunk where I could just do metas or just map complete or PvP for money if I needed it or whatever. But that's the general gist of how I got started, and then was able to have a ridiculous amount of time to toss at the game.
So yeah, because you're also 10K in World vs. World. I think I'll do probably a better job of introducing you now. Slade is the person who, for lack of a better word, he's sort of the dad of our group because he's incredibly old like me and probably gonna die soon, but also like he's just a chill dude and he's one of the nicest people I've ever met, but he also is just a monster of routine. So that's partially like what terrifies me, because you weren't just doing this because it was a thing you did. You enjoyed map completion, and it just grew into this, and you had the time to do it.
Right, and just like then like other things grew. I grew meeting people. I met all the other friends that we hang out with. I met the other guilds that I hang out with. I met all my friends in SOS and CSROs, and just was hanging out with them. And then as like the guild started rotating and I like would hang out with whoever showed up, I had friends all over the world who would stoked to see me, and it was great. It was just like a fun place to hang out, and I ended up just spending like 3 hours or more a morning world be worlding, and then I had bits to give. What? Sorry, no, I didn't care at all. I'd come on and join people later at the evening for another 2 to 3 hours of world be world with my friends after we were done raiding, fractaling, getting our money, and then just hanging out and talking and running on world be world. The thing that and I think this might be something we were going to talk about later, I'm not sure, but just tossing it in there, I hit 10k so fast that it was just
10k
like
in world versus world.
Yeah. And that I had nothing if I wanted to keep seeing the number go, because it's just like you get to that 10k number.
It's so weird that it stops at 10k.
Especially because it still records the levels.
Right.
Or at least you get a level up, and
right.
It's like, can I just give me a number?
Right.
It
doesn't need to do anything.
Yeah, it doesn't need to do anything. It'd be just fun to see, because there are people out there who've been 10k longer than me. I started the game 2 years late. So, and I didn't get into World v World until like 2 years after that. So it would have been fun to see like some of the people who have like 99,000 levels, and just are still going and grinding it out, and just because they're there having fun with their friends.
Right, and this is something I emphasize. This is one of like the two things that I emphasize when I do interview people to join our guild. Is Guild Wars 2 is fantastic because it's about people and it's about projects, and I think what you've said, over your years you spent in this game really illustrates that, where when there's people to play with, it's great. And when you have personal projects to do that you filled your time with when there weren't people to play with, it's great. We can get into, what could ArenaNet do better in a Guild Wars 3 if they do it, if and when it crosses the finish line later. But it's telling to me that, Guild Wars 2 has this wonderful thing where there's, without getting too much into the weeds, actually talking about the game right now, it's not like WoW where you just have one direction, go grind stats and number go up better. It's like got one of 9 directions it can throw you in the right, like when you jump into the game. And it's great for that. You can go raid, you can go RP, you can go map complete, you can go fractal, you can just enjoy your leveling process, you can world versus world, you can PvP at level 2. It does a terrible job of telling you any of those things exist. And granted, the introductory achievements are a little bit better, but something that came up when I was talking with a couple other smaller creators on YouTube is, I think the what are they called? Adventurer's Guide Compendium are just annoying for a lot of veteran players and for new people. And if they did a better job of grabbing your eyes, like say they just rewarded a couple raw gold or incentivized you from actually reading the thing, after a few seconds the first time you did that on your account, I think it would be a lot better. But that's a discussion for another day. But just telling you all these different avenues exist so that someone can know, I didn't get into World vs. World until basically you guys were leaving. I didn't know it was a thing. Build crafting was a thing. A lot of people don't, will play Guild Wars 2 and never even know map completion's a thing or that they might like. Let's go into the questions before we just spend 3 hours just hanging out and talking about crap. So, even before the Legendary Armory got introduced, Slade just basically ground out Legendary gear. That's the TLDR of this. That's what he did, because your passive goal just sort of was in the back of your mind, or maybe in the forefront, to just have full Legendary on all of your characters and then, max the character slots. That's, got an end in sight, but it's a long-term goal, right?
Right. And I was having fun just in general. Like when I first started, the whole being able to make different characters and the classes being different things excited me, and their weapons and the usefulness of those weapons. But then it also became, I wanted to, as more legendary stuff was introduced, I wanted to make the characters be fully legendary, fully kitted out. We didn't have the armory, so it was fun and exciting to me to just have, even if that was all that we got, was the ability to change stats. And I mean, it became much more powerful, but at first it was just on your weapons, so that wasn't such a big thing. But as they added the more features where we could pop sigils out, how we could pop infusions out, change stats on all your armor, your trinkets, the utility became better and better and better as time went on. But that was kind of like you could see it coming in the distance. But until that time came, I was having a blast because I could make so many of my characters just have these full abilities, and I could change my builds. But I also enjoyed building a character. up to that point, like if I needed a new map completion character, I did have a rotationary character or group of names. People may have seen me in the past. I've helped a few people whenever I saw them in the world or needing help in map chat or whatever, and I would have named my characters just map comp number X whatever. I got up to like 52, I think was my last one. I think he may actually still be in my thing, but I was just, those were my side legendary characters. The other like 60 some odd character slots I had, I still wanted to map complete on because that was it's convenient, it's nice, it was something to do. I still went through with all of them, and I wanted them to have themed the world, air quotes, and then have made a legendary so that they could carry their legendaries or get more or feed the main characters, because I did have my main crew of like my initial characters, and I had to get each of them. They were all RP'd out, they had specific hairstyles, they were a family. I had a story for them when I was first starting out. Very MMO, just family knit nonsense. And then from there I started to spiral and make troll name characters and just fun name characters, random stuff that I just couldn't think of. Like right now there's a character in my group that's called Legendary Hobo, which is where all my leftover legendaries went, that I don't even know how the game records them particularly. He's got 111 slots just filled with legendaries that the Armory can't hold them, and ArenaNet couldn't give me anything for them, but they were just there.
And we'll talk about that a little bit. So this is something my brain's screaming at me in the back of my mind. I did a really crap job of introducing you, but a lot of people will, I mentioned Slade has a full legendary armory, and a lot of people take that as, oh, you have one of every legendary, and it's like, no, this guy has max of every legendary that he could get at the time. And essentially, how you described coming off in the distance, when the legendary armor was introduced, that was a really big, and I want to emphasize this, Slade is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, so don't take this as any kind of negative thing or him BMing or anything, but with how religious it was just completing, working on this goal of having legendary everything on his account, when the legendary armory came out, if I can find it, they compensated everybody who had, for example, you had a bunch of incinerators. Like, do you remember how many? It was like 9 or 11 or something.
Looking at it right now.
This is one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, well, that, and it was useful. Like so many classes, I loved the idea of the incinerator. I was a dagger thief for dungeons, like 9 times out of 10, because thief had so much utility. I love the idea of stealthing through Codicus Manor or going through a raw. Just the usefulness of it was so cool to me,
right?
And it was sad to like generally see it kind of get pushed away or fade away, especially when they change fractals to lose the stealth. I'm spinning out out of control, but at the same time, I would make that. You got dagger Ellie.
You had at least 11.
Yeah, I mean, I have got 4, and I could see 7 on Hobo, and there's a spare claw of Connor that it's an incinerator, so that was 8, so I had 12. Because the Connor one is a skin that's sitting over, it's the transmuted incinerator is what I'm reading right now.
So these ones that you see in his inventory are the ones that he had left over. And I also don't want to come off as bragging on his part, because I forced him into this. I just thought it would be an interesting story. But what this means is he had 4 incinerators that went into the armory, which you can see if I ever find the page because I'm a potato. There it is, Legendary Armory, obviously. But he also had 4 left over, and he had that for a lot of different weapons, as well as, compensated for the different pieces of armor that he had. So, these ardent, glorious PvP things, we talked about this. I actually made an extra rune just to see what had happened when they announced, on the off chance that they were compensating. I don't know if they announced it, but I got one of these special PvP legendaries. He got them all because he had overlapping armor on a lot of things, and that's how he, not finagled because we didn't know in advance, but, filled out the armory for a lot of these things. The only ones you see that he doesn't have are the obsidian armor that, went in the game after you stopped playing. You can see you unlock 243 of 288, as well as all of the extra ones. So I guess my next question is, do you want to just describe the process? Because they almost didn't believe you when they had to compensate. And we were all terrified that you were actually just going to get banned or something, because you had to go through, while you were leading our raid group, you had to go through so many levels of support to get to an actual ArenaNet dev for this compensation. And to my knowledge, you're the only person that had to do this.
Yeah, because it was a fun story. It just kept bouncing. first when I did it, I'm like, I can't use any of these. And the first prep guy didn't believe me. So then they moved it up, and it just kind of kept bouncing. And I think we went through 6 or 7 layers till I got to one of the major head GMs who like looked it up, and they were like, all right, here, this is what we're gonna do for you. And they sent me some
and they
of the
had
trunks.
you prove that you made these, right? They like
yeah, that's why hobo, that's what actually the reason that the legendary hobo character exists, because they were like, it would be a lot easier if you could move them all to one character. And I'm like, sure, no problem. So I took my spare character slot at the time and made a character named legendary hobo and just moved everything that I couldn't do anything with, and said, I think you undercompensated me a little bit. They sent me, I think it was like 20 trunks that you could choose.
20 legendary trunks.
That you could choose the, I can't remember.
They all had different assortments of like random crap you could get. Some were some weapons, some were others. It was very weird.
In my bank, I still have the Mistforge trunk, which you can just grab armor from, because that was just like the leftover ones. That's down by the precursor vault.
I wish you could label these.
If you go to in the bank and just scroll practically to the bottom and then come up a couple, you'll see it. But the what was it? I ended up getting I got the legendary great swords.
Right. Sunrise and Twilight. Because you couldn't sell any of these, chat. You had to just bind them to your account because they were meant to be compensation for, filling out your armory for things you didn't have. But he had actually too many of everything, or most things.
Right. And so the only thing I could do, which they didn't unfortunately foresee, was take, and it had to have been more than 20 because I sold 20 swords. But
Eternities?
I sold 20 plus Eternities, and I gave some to my friends.
Right.
As like anyone who was like, I don't have Eternity yet.
And stuff, and you would use that money for other things. Right.
Here. Because I was just gonna sell it, so I was filling orders. There was a period of time where where the market was getting semi-flooded with Eternities. It was largely because that was the only answer I had to get some money out of all the stuff that they sent me as compensation for the stuff I already had.
You could throw the Sunrise and the Twilight that were account bound into the Forge and then sell the Eternity, which was a loss, but 3,000 gold is 3,000 gold.
Exactly. And at the time, I was already just kind of like, the Armory was cool and it had come out, but I could definitely see the writing was on the wall and I was running out of things to do in the near future. So it was just kind of coming to find a good stopping spot, and this is what I'm just going to do. I'll make some people's day if I can and make some money too, which I then, as you can see if you check, I mean, I've got in the Legendary Armory, I have all the Aurene Legendaries. I have played 3 hours of
you
that
have
expansion.
one of each one.
Yeah, I've got one of each of them.
I just want to clarify for all of versus
I mean, you could see,
right?
But I did pick up like each one so that I could get one of each of them as
you're like this is cool. I'm done.
Yeah, basically, it was it was unfortunate. They were pretty and I liked them, and I'm like, these are great. I might have done something with these, but nope, not now. Sorry.
Right. So, that's the story of Slade. We have some, I have some actual meaningful questions that we'll get to, but I want to emphasize this, like, to my knowledge, this dude was always online. It may come out, in the big Guild Wars 2 expose that happens in 40 years, you hacked all of this. I wouldn't believe that for the amount of time you've spent in this game, because I did my age the other day, and you still have more hours in this game, despite me still playing for 2 more years. So, it's crazy impressive. Like, just, Slade is a ridiculous monster of routines. So, like, to that person typing in the comments, I don't have an answer for you. I just, make End of Dragons legendaries, start with that and sell them, and then one day you too can get compensated when Guild Wars 3 comes out or something.
Right.
So, my questions, and I think this is sort of where we get into where people will actually get something out of this now that we're done, rambling, mostly on my end, but, like, did you enjoy your time in Guild Wars 2?
Absolutely. And yeah, I didn't dislike anything. There might have been frustration points, you get a bad PvP team, or you get an angry troller or World v World guy who's hacking or something like that. Those are just normal frustrations. But otherwise, yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and at the moment I have 22,487 hours.
Still only have 18. I say only.
And I want to say when I stopped helping you, before I started helping you, I think I was
right, because he was doing Harvest Up with us for a substantial amount of time.
think I gave you about 380 hours or so is what I'm gonna
Hell
give or
yeah.
take a little bit. One of the things I really hated and always got under my gob, especially in a game that actually tracks your hours, was AFKing. So I wouldn't I hated the idea of padding my hours just to pad my hours. Like there's a couple people here where there's this guy that I'm looking at, his number's 3 on the list, and he's got 46,000 hours. If you do the math on that, that means he's been online like 22 hours
Right.
of every day.
As long as the
And it's
game's
just like,
existed.
bro, just turn the damn game off. You're going to sleep. Go to sleep. You don't need to AFK farm or whatever the hell you're doing. I understand people have limited time or whatever. I get that. I'm sorry, but that's the guy who's got like 30,000 hours.
I like that that's the metric that you're like, damn it.
Just like, can't believe it. No, but that was like always a silly thing to me because it's just like, I would see these guys who have these hours and I'm always just like, why are you on?
So they can have the number. I don't know.
That and they've probably got a trade program running or something like that. It's someone who's running the TP and they've got to make their extra gold. I don't know. It was always one of those things that seemed silly to me, but I only played for fun, so it always was just like, it was an actual metric of hours that I played, not hours that I was AFK somewhere. And just, that was...
They're all queuing in the PvP lobby, dude. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So we already went into what made you actually stop, which was the release of the Legendary Armory, because that effectively killed the big personal project you had set for yourself. Was there anything else really? Because I mentioned this, something personally, and if you paid attention for any length of time, you'll know that, or tried to lead a guild at all, herding cats, as I say, or getting people to show up for a thing is just work in any kind, especially if it's 9 other people who have jobs or now kids or families or whatever it is. So Slade led our Fractal group and raid group for probably 6 years.
Yeah.
At least. Was there anything other than the release of the Legendary Armory that made you go, I'm done? Because to me, what also kind of I saw you guys' attrition was End of Dragons came out. Everyone was really excited for the release of End of Dragons, but when it came out, none of the challenge modes were in for the strike missions, and they have these are a lot of things that ArenaNet has fixed, especially with the release cadence now. So I don't want to get dog on them too much, but none of the strike mission challenge modes were out, or maybe there was one, and it was like super easy. There was no real new group content that we could do in our little friend group, and you had all the legendaries now, and functionally infinite money.
Yeah. What I would say is probably there were the other major factors that were at play was coming into time. I had spent a lot of time, and I had prefaced this kind of earlier that I was an at-home dad, but it was fresh at the time. Like I started Guild Wars, I think when one of my kids wasn't even born,
right,
and the other one was like 1 or 2, and now they were old enough for me to do things with them. So I was kind of getting to that point where it was like, I would like to be able to be free. As you said, I was leading the raid group and the Fractal group. And
a lot of time.
I was religious about it. I mean, the Fractal, we would run all the Fractals. It'd be great. Then we'd do some World v World. It was always like a good from, I don't know, for
like
me,
5 hours a game minimum.
5 or 6 o'clock, and it would end at like 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade it for probably anything in the world. Now, during that time, for the most part, I go hang out with my family, or when I'm not doing that, I hang out with my friends from Guild Wars still, but I play other games. Like right now, Helldivers is popular. That's where we're at. We're playing Helldivers. Same Fractal group for the most part.
For a while, it was Lost Ark as well, until you hit that big grind Lost Ark wall, and you're like, this is just the same amount of time.
Yeah, pretty much. We hit the Lost Ark was fun while we were Lost Ark running through, doing the story, grinding. We did the raids for a while, but then we had like long release cadence windows, bad RNG, whatever.
Right.
And we were just like, and plus we were just eating up so much time again. And most of us don't want that at the moment.
Right, that's why a lot of them, actually, I want to emphasize this isn't just Slade, sorry to interrupt you. It wasn't just Slade, it was like a lot of people in our friend group were like, raiding every week, full clearing like all of the raids, even with the new strikes or whatever, is a lot of time. And after 3 years of this, it's getting annoying, even if it's a good source of gold. So it wasn't so much they were annoyed with the game, it's just like, I want my life back, or I need to get, some more time to work on my house or whatever.
right? Just or other things. But I mean, I was driven because at the time it was still, I needed the insights to make more armor, and I needed the gold to make more.
So you had a motivation to keep that raid going.
I had a strong motivation to, even if someone needed some time off or whatever, I was fine. Great. We'll find someone in the guild. We'll find someone from LFG, whatever. I was cool with just go for it. But once we got to the point with the Armory, that goal was toast, and my life goals had changed, and people around me were changing
it sucks
and
that
growing
kids like age up and get responsibilities.
I know. It does and it doesn't, because now I'm like, playing Elden Ring Reforged with my son. It's amazing, but whatever.
That's great. So, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back at some point, probably at an opportune time. So,
it was a lot of herding cats, like you had said.
Oh,
like there was
awful.
So much.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say.
Into like keeping a raid group together, and let alone keeping the same raid group together, but finding 2 or 3 of them have a vacation.
And this isn't just Guild Wars 2. This is any game. If anything, Guild Wars 2 is more forgiving from what I hear than a thing like WoW or something. Because every raid is Harvest Temple in WoW when it comes out.
Right, and here you just don't need to. Most of the stuff, especially the older content, we've out-leveled it or out-healed it. And another thing that I think rubbed a lot of us the wrong way with, that added to the like little sticks that we were tossing onto our bonfire as we left Guild Wars, was ArenaNet's decision. I know, to me, I don't mind so much that each of the classes can do a thing, but it does really take away from their identity. And I get that it allows people, but it takes away from the joy of like, well, I'm going to go get on this class. And it's like, well, if the class doesn't have any unique buffs, why? It doesn't even matter. So it's just get on Snow Pirates and find out which one is the best at doing that thing, and you take that one until the buffs change around again.
So this is something that I actually brought up when they were doing this, is as soon as he's talking about the homogenization of boons and the thing that where they added alacrity to every class, technically. They added quickness to every class, technically. Every class can be a support, technically. But as soon as they announced they were doing that, I talked to my game design friend, and we were both like, there's always going to be a best in slot. Even if it's only for one fight, you're going to, full stack Virtuosos or something for damage. You're going to, because they can do damage at range. You're going to take Mechanist when it came out because, yeah, Druid can do Alacrity with Spirits at the time, but holy crap, Mechanist can do it without pressing buttons, There's that side of things for the base boons, but because they were focused so hard on the boons, they started stripping all the classes of their unique stuff. That's the other side of this, is things like, I can't go one stream without complaining that my build on Warrior got eaten, but like, there were other classes that had a lot of their unique identity not destroyed, but definitely watered down as a result of this.
It was fun to build a raid, trying to build min-max, finding people who enjoyed playing their classes, but also could bring unique buffs for the group, like Rev's 250 ferocity that I think got dropped to 150 later, but it was still a unique reason to bring a Revenant.
Right.
Now it's a unique reason because it's the best buffer. And it's just like...
So, and also, in case you didn't, haven't glanced at Guild Wars 2 recently, everything just does infinity damage now. There's like a Ranger build that was doing 47k and providing barrier and healing, and it's like, it's the Virtuoso problem of like, why would I ever take anything else, like I was talking about. But speaking to the flavor thing, I don't want to turn this into hot take land, but this is just my opinion and something I'm hearing from you as well. But you, again, feel free to correct me, is for, 10 years that we had spent in the life of the Guild Wars 2, part of ArenaNet sort of made this change. Let me back up one step and say they made this change in the sake of diversity. And what they were trying to say with the word diversity is they want like, a warrior to get into a group, or they want, a thief to be able to get into a group as a support. And yes, that does crowbar in those things, especially if everything is so overtuned that it can technically work as a support or whatever in that role. But to me, at least personally, and from what I've seen of Guild Wars 2, as well as a human on Earth, I enjoy meeting people from other backgrounds or different cultures because they bring something unique to the table. Because, people use cultural appropriation in a negative connotation a lot, but I enjoy learning about other cultures. I enjoy, learning about trying different foods. You try different foods when you travel, learning about other cultures, learning about their views and stuff. And again, this is just my opinion. He can give his in a second. But what, to me, when they did this is partially because ArenaNet's balance cadence is not prioritized in this game. It's a very visually pretty game. They have 250 artists, etc., etc., etc. Their balanced team is 4 people in a shed and a cat. They don't have the release cadence, and I said this at the time, but I was willing to be proven wrong, to come up with adding back flavor, and now 2 years later, we still don't have that. We still have Untamed with the Grandmaster that just provides quickness and is useless in World versus World. They just took Alacrity away from 2 classes and gave them an ancillary burn and boon in World versus World. And to me, there's a juggle between, yeah, there was probably a better way to do this, to do both things, but also words are easy and works hard, so I'm not on their balance team and don't have their design documents. Hit me up, Cal, if you want to talk about that. I'd love to. But to me, diversity, that word, I understand the way they were using it, but to me, I don't want to reclassify diversity, but my interpretation of it would be cooler is if when we had the, Revenants bring a unique buff, or at the very least, Revenant is good at, can provide Alacrity, Warrior can do damage, sort of, so you get people playing different things. I understand that, if I want to be a support and a Warrior, I'm just kind of out of luck and before they did this change, but I don't know. I don't know if it's better to have, people of different backgrounds all wearing the same hat, essentially, or people of different backgrounds where one person is just can only do each thing and therefore you get diversity that way, is what I'm saying. But to me, I think the latter was at least more well known, and this might be an old man shouts at cloud things, but that's, to me, one thing that made Guild Wars 2 stick with me, because it's like, oh, there's a unique build for this, or there's a unique play style for this. And I hope in the future they can add some of that back.
Yeah, me too. I think it helps. I guess right now it's a good way to homogenize and get all their weapons out and whatever they're working on right now. I don't fault them and dislike the game. I just didn't like where that went, unfortunately, because
right.
it made things feel less unique, less strategizing, less fun. I guess it was more inclusive. I could see that argument.
It definitely reinforced a lot of the new players and keeping them in the game that they got with End of Dragons.
But it always seems like, to me, I mean, and I'm
right,
just
for
different,
vets,
and
it was
did
like,
have
why?
More time. But if I was ever excluded from a group because I wasn't playing a Rev that didn't have the buff, I would see a reason for me to now want to build gear out and enjoy playing a Rev to bring that buff. But that's my mindset, and others don't have it, so I understand.
Right, and again,
it's your thing and not my thing.
We played this game for 10 years. We're coming from a history of that, so we were used to it. So it may just be old men shouting at clouds, but I also think that you're listening to this interview tough. You're coming here for our opinions, our experiences. Thus is YouTube. 90% of YouTube can just be boiled down to its React content in some way. Anyway, so very roundabout way of answering that question. Already talked about the 10k arbitrary world versus world limitation. ArenaNet, I know you just added more tiers for Ultimate Dominator and the Defender version of this, as well as the PvP versions. Just unlimit the 10k thing. 9,000 or 99,999. Why? So aside from that, because I don't know if that would fully tempt you to ever come back to Guild Wars 2, especially now that you have a family, but is there anything, changing gears a little bit, from hot take land, cooling it off, is there anything at all that you've observed with EOD or SoTO that makes you interested or might make you interested in checking out Guild Wars 2 again? Other than, more world versus world level.
No, not at the moment, but it's not because I don't like the game. It's more of I'm taking a shut off policy, because if I do come back, I'm probably going to want to do like achievement, story, and everything I can as far as like blind playthrough and not use so much of my power. Just automatically take my characters that are all legendary. I mean, I'll probably still do it for the story, but I'd still want to start like a fresh character and maybe map complete again, and then
There's
just take that character
around, actually,
all the way through to where we are now. But I'd rather do that, I think, especially now that Guild Wars 3 has been announced, paying attention to whether or not they're going to do the Hall of Monuments. I know, I'm sorry. You heard it here first, apparently. But if they're going to do what was the joke from Reddit, the god of the gods walking amongst mere mortals from the Hall of Monuments and whatnot, if they're going to do something like that, I might jump on to take care of that stuff. I don't know. I'm leaving it alone to not influence my view or anything, and just jump into the game fresh as if I haven't been in the game for a couple of years. Yeah. and I'll do that. I'm gonna wait like another year, so I imagine, before I jump in, and then I'll take a look and see whatever expansion or what's going on with the world. I'm still paying attention to the news, and SoTO fills me in on stuff all the time, so I don't need to worry.
It means
about
Guild
too
Wars
much.
2 news. But as far as I know, the world is still snowing outside. So, ArenaNet, these are old questions that in retrospect are going to sound stupid, but I'm still going to ask them now that Guild Wars 3 has been, spoilers, been announced, or at least funded. ArenaNet, and to be clear, people, if you want my hot take on that, a lot of people have actually messaged me today and been like, oh, do you have any big takes on this? I'm like, dude, it's just getting funded. It's going to be like 5-6 years before it's an MMO. Like, even if they've been hiring Unreal 5 devs, which they have for a really long time for, in quotes, unrelated projects, it's going to be 5-6 years before we see anything from this, especially with the game, how the games industry is. So I hope it crosses the finish line. And we can talk about what we want from that, and we probably will. But, now that ArenaNet, the question actually relevant to this is, now that ArenaNet has teased that there will be, in quotes, something that will get veterans very excited next expansion, and they put that blurb out, those exact words, before the news came out today. And to be clear, ArenaNet hasn't said anything about Guild Wars 3. This was all from, like, a different site. Is there anything, it's probably a Hall of Monuments sort of thing, but is there anything that could possibly make you pick up Guild Wars 2 again, which you already kind of talked about, or, casually, or even whatever the equivalent of casual is for you, that could be?
Not at the moment, but again, I am just watching. That's a poor way to say it. Not at the moment. Yes, but I already kind of went into it earlier. I probably will be. I had said it a long while ago. I still enjoy the game. I love the art style. I love the wardrobe. I loved a lot of the concepts. I love the combat.
People are great.
Is a great game. Yeah, the people are great in general across the board. I would jump back into World v World just to do it if there were people. That was probably one of the last things I did do, like, randomly when I wasn't doing Harvest Temple with you, is like, because I still had the game installed.
Right.
I will. I just don't
Oh,
see
you
myself doing it for like another year or two.
I hold no delusions of any of my friends ever coming back. I'll annoy them with builds from time to time, but I personally, just because the world is about me and I'm the main character of existence, the reason I still run the guild is because I enjoy the people so much. It's because I like to keep the community going. It's also a sunk cost fallacy thing, don't want to give it up, but I would like to create a community, and I feel like I have over the past, 7 years or whatever, 6,400 years I've been doing this, that has good values and where everyone feels comfortable playing a video game and has fun, because video games are for fun. So that's one of the reasons I keep this going, is because, like, oh, you want to jump back into World versus World? We have all the stuff, So just talking, we're getting toward the end of the list, which is good because, don't want to take up your whole night. I know you got hell to dive. Is there anything in the MMO space, because you mentioned a couple names to me that sort of came and went real fast. Is there anything in the MMO space that you've been looking at all, or has been tempting you, or any game at all? Because I know you're a religious Souls fan as well, but is there anything in other games that has been tempting you to jump into them, even if other people don't, or that you could see incorporated into a Guild Wars 2 or 3 that might make you come back to it?
Incorporated is one where it's hard to say. I love their art department and their art style because they have so many and they're really good at what they do for the most part, and their mounts have been fantastic.
For Guild Wars, not for Elden Ring.
Yeah, for Guild Wars.
But also fantastic.
There were some early trailers for Throne and Liberty, but now that more stuff has come out, I'd have to see how Amazon messes it up. I mean, does a great job.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed. That was one. The world for like the big guild battles obviously got my attention on that one because of the fact that they had those giants that were fighting it out while everyone else was fighting it out beneath them, which was really cool because it was basically like, instead of us having to use catapults, you summoned up like a giant rock stone golem who literally beat the crap out of like a wall, and that's how you guys got in. But then your stone goblin giant had to like fight whatever the hell that other thing was. But there was a Chrono Odyssey. I'm interested as hell to see how that goes. That time mechanic being an MMO, I'm really curious to see how that mechanic's going to work. And if that Unreal 5 engine can hold up on people's computers, and seeing dungeons, as much as I loved raiding was great, but it was still 10-man. 5 in dungeons is a lot easier.
It's a lot easier to get a
so
hold of 4 people than it is 9 people.
Yeah, because it was like fractaling. We could do that fairly easily. We could get a regular group of people who were totally committed and people who wanted to join the group because they were sitting outside, but we couldn't fully fill in. It's the same thing, but with dungeons, at least early days of Guild Wars, you could just run through, and then you could run through again. It was a lower value, but because you got the tokens and dungeons were so short, once everyone got a fish at them, it was a lot of fun to just go through and you've got to go through. I'll get you your dailies. Let's go again. Whatever. I'll have fun with that. So I would really like to see dungeons again, but that's probably something that's been beat over the bush a few thousand times already, and small group content other than Fractals.
Well, even something that's not an MMO. What do you like about Helldivers?
Helldivers is easy to jump into. It's easy to understand. It's easy for friends to pick up and play, and people enjoy the satire nature. The graphics are
doesn't take itself super
really
seriously.
Yeah, it's just a fun, simple thing. It's something people who don't have a lot of time can get a lot out of, and people who have a lot of time can get a lot out of. And that is a harder thing, I would say, nowadays to put together.
Guild Wars 2 is the same way, just different, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely that set your own project sort of thing. So, possible last question, but there's a couple things that I thought of while we were doing this, which I warned you might happen. If I'm just gonna read this as I wrote it. If a Guild Wars 3, and I wrote this before yesterday, if a Guild Wars 3 were to materialize from the realm of impossibility, what would you like from it personally? What would you keep from Guild Wars 2? Or what would you just personally like to see in Guild Wars 3?
Probably this would be hard for them to do, and I can understand why. It'd be a fun, interesting mix of managing to mold the combat system that a lot of people loved from the original Guild Wars in with the speed of Guild Wars 2, which would be a bit more difficult. As it stands, they've done a great job of trying to keep the identity of the characters to me, but still have the fast-paced combat.
In Guild Wars 2.
I don't really know how... Yeah, in Guild Wars 2. I don't know... I would love to see improved iteration of the action combat style that they've got. I'd love to see dungeons, like I was already going off a few seconds ago. I'd love to see...
So again, that's 5-man content or 5-person combat or content.
A lot more small team. Okay, so this would be a weird way to do it, but honestly, as far as like taking stuff from other MMOs and iterating, would be along the lines of Lost Arks. I would keep their format for rewards. So the monetary rewards is something that's useful across all levels of your play or characters. And then the dungeons currency, that way it has a value despite whatever era you come across or level gap they do in the game. I'm fine with, I've never had a problem with not having the progressive gear wheel. I understand. I like the idea of becoming stronger. I do it all the time in like Souls game stuff. Like I'll do soul level 1 runs. I'll do trying to get max level on a character or at least max stats for making some silly gib insta-kill move. But I don't mind just getting your set max level and then we have a, flat gear progression. You just don't go anywhere.
I mean, you can still
build
build
that. I'm cool.
In Guild Wars 2 as well. It's just, you change your stats around now. Your glass cannon thief. They can do all their damage before they come out of stealth.
Right.
I'm not salty.
They still play with their builds, but I mean, it's stat capped. That's what I'm talking about. It's not like the gear treadmill of like other MMOs where you're constantly just trying to make, where you're just trying to get more
or even
stats.
Lost
And I know
Ark,
a lot of people
which kind of wore us out on it.
And I enjoy that side of things, but I'm also okay with the other side. I'm good with most games just to have fun, as long as my friends and everyone are having fun, and as long as they've got some sort of content to keep us engaged and fast-paced and fun. I'm fine if they got a couple of raids. It would be advantageous for them, I think, because people love that and it gets more people online, and then the smaller groups could break off and do fractals or dungeons. Again, I'd prefer dungeons, but in a Lost Ark format, so that you have a need to do them, and it's easier to get like the LFG being at the dungeon door and finding people and like an auto fill so that you can just find groups automatically for you for people who don't have the time or don't want to. But having the currency be valuable, that's the thing that I feel like Lost Ark lost out on was like a lot of their dungeons, the currency, especially the early ones, they were semi-interesting and fun, had a lot of mechanics, but you only go there that one time because once you're 50 levels higher, you're never going back. You have no reason to. And so new players going to the game have no one to do it with at all. And it was fun. I remember like the days when I would trade in like months of turning in dungeon tokens, because you would then go forge them and you might get a precursor or two. And it was just like a hell yeah moment.
This is before Fractals, I believe he's talking about.
It was like well, even after Fractals came out, you could still do the same thing, but it went away. I mean, you can still do that right now, but there's no huge dungeon scene. Not compared to what it was back then.
What I was going to ask is, what in your mind, because ArenaNet has just started calling them fractal dungeons, or dungeon fractals, because they gave up. But what in your mind differentiates the dungeon experience from Fractals experience, as somebody who ran Fractals for years after those become, forcefully almost more relevant in this game?
Dungeons didn't get touched, and Fractals kept getting touched up to where we couldn't do fun stuff.
Like Thief stealthing past all this stuff.
The Thief
and that was fun.
I mean, originally, when Fractals came out, they were still just dungeons. It was still a fractal dungeon at the time, and it had its own currency,
weird meta strats as well.
Right, and you could get the fractal token or the fractal relics, and then we got the later ones. But you also could still do interesting and fun things, and you still can to some degree. But for the most part, it wasn't just a DPS run the exact same way it is in dungeons. It was like we forced you into a gate, or you had to do something else, and they took away, like, the big one that obviously comes in my mind because I was a thief was Horik, and being able to stealth out his entire cannon phase, and they just eliminated that because they didn't want you to do that. And It was just like
unintended or emergent gameplay that they were not okay with, let's say.
Right, and it's just like, but they didn't touch dungeons, and you can stealth through Caudicus Manor. And it's just like, okay, so was it intended there, and you just didn't want to say anything, or you just don't care because they don't care?
Or were they already phasing out dungeons and it wasn't a priority? Right. Okay.
And it was fun to see tactics and the community come together and think of things and share it, and then it filters out to everybody. I remember the first time I did Fractals, I did it with another, I don't remember who, it was like literally my first time, and it was Cliffside. And the thief who was basically carrying our sorry noob butts, and he knew it too. He got us to the top, and he shared the achievement for bowing and whatnot. And he wasn't a dick about it. I mean, we had to have died probably on the switchback section at least 7 or 8 times, and we did that part. But he stuck it out with us, and we got to the top, and he was cool with it, and he showed us how to do the thing, and it was just like, see, that's cool. Thanks, guy. Thank you for helping out and being a good individual.
So one thing comes to my mind, actually, because I never really got into... I mean, I learned how to do the Aether Path back when it was hard, and you couldn't just brute force through everything with infinity stability. I learned how to do that, and I would teach that to people. That's as close as I got to, like, really hardcore dungeoning. The one thing that comes to my mind with emergent gameplay was when we were first starting to do Harvest Temple Challenge mode, there was a strat that came about where you could actually invuln all of the greens mechanic. If your character had invulns, or if they had a short enough invuln, you could stack Sylvari. And they actually patched that out of the game because it wasn't a way they wanted people to do that fight. And I understand there's always going to be stuff like that, and that's not something that users can really control. But I think what Slade is trying to say, if he's trying, if we want to focus on the positive takeaway from this, is just, ain't it, if you're listening, and I know you are, I know you watch this, so that's sort of a joke, but sort of not, is that some emergent gameplay, especially when it's relevant to your class and your flavor, is fun, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And in that case, it just would have upset me in general, because I remember when that was a thing, and it goes back to all the other Mesmer things, like Mesmer Greens on, what's it called? VG, Veil Guardian. That was a fantastic, and some of the most fun raiding I ever had was when we had to invuln the group.
Right.
But they got rid of that.
Well, now you just don't do greens because you can heal through it. So, yeah, plus and minus.
But again, that's another way to just not have to worry
weird
about
priorities. Weird.
And it's just sad, because it's just like the players think of these things, they use the mechanics that you give them.
Right. Here's the tools, don't use that one.
It's no longer invuln. You need to rewrite the way that is. I think we need to share the English dictionary, and you need to explain to me where you're reading invuln and I'm reading invuln, because they're not the same.
It's invulnerable except for this one thing that kills it.
Right, that's exactly what I want to see when I see the skill in game. I want to hover over it, and when it says invulnerability, except, and then the brackets just needs to be a page-long thing of not in Veil Guardian Harvest Temple.
I mean,
like each of these things are no longer allowed.
I know you're saying that in jest, and we would like that because it would, we're balanced and build nerds and such. The tooltips have gotten ridiculous, partially because they've actually had to start being more accurate with like what it applies to, and partially because the skills are just turning into Yu-Gi-Oh cards where they do everything, which is power creep, and that's a different discussion, but I see what you're saying. So that's all I had written down. Is there anything else that, like, maybe something you want to ask me, something that you've thought of?
Nothing that I've thought of. Yeah, I just really I want to reiterate. So I was, and I don't know
anything
how much
you would like Arena to take away from this, things that they could learn.
Yeah, I mean, they did actually. So right up before when they were originally thinking about it, I did get an NDA and talk to ArenaNet, and that was when I found out more or less that I had the most legendaries. Probably not. I don't know. If I'm breaking it, I'm sorry. You can ban me from the game. It's been years now. I'm not just because I think the primary thing with it was largely just the existence and the creation of the Armory. I told the gentleman who I talked to that I thought it was a great idea. I think it was going to be great for the game. I still think it's a great idea, and I still think it's great for the game.
Wonderful.
That didn't mean that it didn't destroy my
Right, it's not great for
thing.
you.
But I'm only one person, and I mean, it helped out the game a bunch, and I saw that and was totally behind it.
It's like my insane daring dragon build. I was probably the only person on Earth using that trait for how it was built, and then they changed it to Alacrity, so I was the only person on Earth who was salty about that. And I understand that Alacrity on Bladesword is a support build.
Yeah, and it's just, I just wanted to more or less I didn't mind. I don't dislike the Armory, and don't take that away. I mean, I like the concept of the Armory 100%. And I still wanted to fill it up. Like, I think I might have been missing a couple things, and like, because you couldn't. I remember when the Armory came out, you couldn't make multiple, what's it called, Gen 2 legendaries, and that was like the thing that kept me going for like the last year or so.
That was another thing, yeah. And even after they put the Armory in, he did fill out, if I can get some footage, all of the Gen 2 legendaries, which they unlimited. To
that was like one of my last fun things.
Claw of Conir here, Binding of Ipos. Ipos, who knows? Probably nobody. So that's everything I had on my list. And again, solid feedback, I think. Ooh, you could log in and get your one legendary relic, actually, by the way. You could have one more. I'm seeing that here. It's not, you'll get compensated for that. Sorry. So after the Armory came out, there's a couple things that, like, there's something that came up that I thought of while we were doing this, and we can maybe talk about a little bit if you have time. But just things that I would personally, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, which is kind of why I wanted to include you in this, is things that would keep you going with the game. He mentioned that, after, at least for him, the Armory came out, he mentioned he no longer had a utility for raids, so that, the force of will needing to keep the raid group going, aside from the people, the project was no longer there, so that exploded. ArenaNet, if you are listening, the one thing more than that I want, and we have talked about this and I know other people want, although I could be putting words in your mouth right now, so again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. More than anything, for a Guild Wars 2 or a Guild Wars 3, aside from just like 100 character text box that you can say where your development money is going when you buy gems, even if it doesn't go there and you don't read it, it would make me, give the illusion of mattering. As far as funding this game and voting with your wallet, the one thing I want from this game, and the one thing that was at the top of the list whenever we would talk about this, is cross-game mode rewards. Even if they suck, right? But hopefully good cross-game mode rewards. So you, for example, have an incentive to keep doing raids every week. For example, like there's the trophy tokens you get from raids. If those had been used for, say, limited use activators that were good in World versus World, then you would have an incentive to help people in your guild finish raids beyond full clearing it for yourself every week. You would have an incentive to join a World versus World guild and be able to contribute to that guild and that community in a meaningful way. even if you were only a PvE nerd, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that one a lot because it was just like we had another friend. He would talk about it a lot because he'd had experiences with it in Dark Age of Camelot.
Right.
And he loved the idea of cross stuff. And
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have that friend
great.
anymore and he's dead now or something.
No.
Shout out to Edmonton if he's listening.
He lives in Hawaii. He's never coming back. Anyways.
Dark Age of Camelot.
Yeah, he's playing Dark Age of Camelot at this point. No, he would talk about it a lot, and then that would get us going. And it was one of those things where it's just like, we get all these tokens. That's great. But can we use them, even if it was an exorbitant amount of money, to do something silly with like a World v World Tactivator that would just be fun and it would totally chew something up.
Right.
Like certain ones
Summon
that could
the
only be
linebacker
slotted
from
in, like,
Doom CM or something. Tackle people into the
perfectly
wall.
in the middle of SMC. Plus, it would make people think twice about taking your SMC if they saw it. Like, if you look at the SMC, look at the Tactivators loaded, and, like, the one defense one isn't the ship that blows around and blows everything.
Which is cool.
Cannon. Yeah, if it was the linebacker, like, you just have a Doom head picture. The asset's already in the game. It probably would wreck the server because
it would make Zera explode and 4 assets would blow up, but, you know.
Right. It would be really funny, though. Maybe in Guild Wars 3. It would be fantastic to just, like, watch a Zerg run in. And if no one's ever thought of this, they're silly. They really need to. Because it's just like 50 people charging in to fight 50 other people. And one of the groups pulls the Tactivator. And just literally 50 get jacked off to the wall and dead. And it's over.
We actually have, without plugging, this is actually something we came up with the guild. And we did a whole write-up for Vanguards of Ascension. Of all of the cross game mode suggestions, so I'll try to dig that out of the archive and link that in the description as well. This is sort of a collaboration from a lot of our friends who did put, 10,000 hours plus into this game and have played all of, if not a lot of, all of every game mode. I think there's some good suggestions, obviously, in that. Feedback's good and it's terrible. Take from that what you will, but hopefully there are some gems there that ANET can go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or no, maybe, holding a thing in PvP doesn't need to give you a 10% damage bonus or whatever we said in PvE. That's just an arbitrary example I made up now, but there are definitely things I think you could earn from one game mode that could contribute to another one without making them egregious or mandatory for that other game mode, but would still necessitate tools. And this gets into my final point that I think I want to talk about is the things that keep Guild Wars 2 going, whether you're a dungeon runner, whether you're a raid group leader, whether you're someone who sits around in the build editor or in, streams 2 to 3 times a week, bad Bladesworn builds, is the people and the projects. It is the things that you set for it is the people you meet because the community rocks and the projects that you set for yourself. Guild Wars 2, in my opinion, and you can please feel free to give your own thoughts in a second, if it needs a second thing, it is to reinforce the positive systems, or maybe Guild Wars 3 needs to do this, reinforce the positive systems a little bit more for building communities of people. So maybe, if the guild missions people don't exist anymore, maybe, new systems in the guild panel that could do that. You make bounties a guild mission. Make, as you're introducing new content, at least have the option for them to select it, not make them random from Wizard Vault. People are, I still have people who show up and do every week because I have somebody who leads it for guild missions. 20 to 30 people a week. It blows my mind, but they still do that because it's part of the community. Stuff like that. It also, the third thing, subsection B under that, the projects. Please have a better, how do I phrase this? Better design system for introducing people into the different avenues of the game beyond just reading text in an adventure compendium. Have something that draws their eyes. Have something that rewards people for participating in that learning process, that rewards them in a meaningful way that they will care about, or introducing them even into, not even necessarily into raids, into the build craft side of things, into world versus world, into, hell, RPing in Divinity's Reach or wherever they do it. Something like that lets you know these communities exist, they're awesome, this is worthy of mentioning in our game, because we played this enough and identified this as a thing that people do. The third-party tools for this game, I'm still using one right now, I'm staring at efficiency, are amazing. the things that people have come up with to externally support this game, whether it's, you know, whatever you think about them, the Guild Wars 2 efficiency site or the build editor or any of the DPS meters or any of the fashion sites or any of the farming sites or Blish HUD or anything like that, are phenomenal additions. Please support those communities that exist for those things in your game more. Do you have anything to maybe add or subtract from that on that side of things?
Mostly just a little bit of an ad. The game's called Guild Wars, and they get it probably
2026,
right? It's just like, guys, just do a little bit for Guild Wars, you know, just you know, help your guilds, help your communities. Especially the World v World ones, and it just ties back to them wanting to do more things, make it more integrated between World v World and PvE and PvP, so that there's more.
Not mandatory, integrated.
Yeah, and have fun with. I mean, they have fantastic gameplay. They have fantastic art. The only thing that they really feels like they need to really work on, like, not going onto the soapbox of everything that they need to work on, but to bring things together, would be to assist their communities that they have in the game, the guilds. Like, it's just a completely forgotten mechanic that could be really good, but doesn't.
There's a lot of, not to cut you off, there's a lot of guild leaders out there, not just myself, but a lot of people who genuinely, you know, obviously there's good people and there's bad people everywhere. You learn that just existing in life. But there's a lot of people who love this game, myself included, Slade included, that want, or at one point wanted, tools to be able to create better communities. I understand that doesn't apply to everybody, but that does apply to people. Please help us do that. I think that's it. You have any final thoughts now that this has gone on for, it's about an hour. It's about what I thought it would be.
Nothing major. Just Guild Wars 2 community.
Yeah. I'll see you in Guild Wars 3 in 5 years. Oh, we used to have this joke. I got a good closing joke, Slade. We used to have this joke. Or it'd be like, hey, you're done with the game. Can I have your account? Slade, can I have your account?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. I'm going to like sell all these legendaries that I can't. I'm kidding. I don't need it. Tune in Monday, Wednesday for streams with me, build crafting and complaining about Warrior. Lots of them. I give away money almost every Monday or Tuesday, whatever day I can stream. 1 hour after reset, Guild Wars 2 reset. So that's 9 Eastern, sometimes Friday. Sub to the channel if you like a lot of this content. I don't monetize anything. I did this just because I thought it was a fun story and I wanted to share. Not just someone who had spent their life in a game in a negative way, but someone who is just almost... It's beyond impressive what you've accomplished here in Guild Wars 2. Just the ridiculous monster of routine that Slade is. I don't have better words other than that. So while maintaining, you know, he's not toxic. He doesn't brag about this. To my knowledge, no one else knows that he's, you know, still #1 on the leaderboards for this. So shout out to him for managing to just be a chill guy, despite, you know, all of the arbitrary digital ego that you've accumulated with this. Yeah, Guild Wars 3. I'm excited. You excited? We'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'm SoTO. This is Slade. And yeah, thanks for joining. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know if you have any additions, questions for him. Again, only rule is use your brain, which I know it's tough for me too. But yeah, cheers. Thank you for joining. I'll see you in Tyria. Peace out.
Bye.